Hi, I'm Phil, the Youth Services Librarian at Octavia Falin Children and Youth Library. Welcome to Hour of Code, which is a program for elementary and middle school age students that teaches them how to use computer programming to do things like create animations and design video games. For the month of November, we're going to be learning about video game design, and we'll even be building some of our own simple video games. Today, we'll be creating a simple gaming story using code, and I also want to just introduce you to the Scratch coding interface. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to do is open up a browser tab and type in the web address scratch.mit.edu. And once you've done that, you will see this homepage. Now we're going to log in. If you already have a Scratch account, you can click Sign In, or if you've never used Scratch before and you don't have an account, you can click Join Scratch. Scratch is 100% free to create an account and there are no ads. So first you'll create a username and a password, and kids, if you don't have your own email address, you'll have to use one of your parents' email addresses to connect your account to their email. In case you forget your password, it helps you be able to reset your account. Once you've created your account, you can sign in by entering your username and password. I highly recommend writing down your username and password so you don't forget it in the future. Once you've signed in, you'll see the Scratch homepage, and there's a lot to look at, and I'd encourage you to look around and explore, but don't get overwhelmed. Today we're going to be starting with what's called a starter project. A starter project is a program that somebody else has created and that we're going to add onto. To access the starter project, you will actually click the link for the starter project in the video description below. And once you click that link, it will open up our starter project. One of the amazing things about Scratch is that anybody can make a program and share it with the rest of the Scratch coding community, and then other people can look at that project and also add onto it. To add onto it, we're going to click the Remix button, and when we do that, it will make a copy of this program that's just unique to us, and it will save it in our file so that now we can add our own code to this project. Let me give you a quick tour around the Scratch interface. Over here in the top right-hand corner, we have what's called the stage. This is what the person who's looking at your program will see when they are looking at your program. To start the program, you will click the green flag, and to stop the program, you can click the red stop sign. Below the stage, we have two areas. The first one is an area where you can control what are called your sprites. Sprites are any pieces of your program that are independent of each other that can move around. So for example, you see that I have one sprite here called Android, and I have another sprite that's actually not showing right now called Transition. You can add more sprites by hovering your mouse over this little cat, and you can actually click on the magnifying glass, and there's a whole library of sprites you can choose from here within Scratch, or you can also upload your own images to use as sprites as well from your computer. Now over to the right is called the backdrop area. The backdrop is what you see behind all of the sprites. In this case, we have a simple white background, and we'll just stick with that for today. But just like with the sprites, there is a library of backdrops that you can choose from. And you can also upload your own images to Scratch as well to use as backdrops. Now, in the very, very middle of my screen here, in this big gray area, this is where my code for my program is going to go. Now, the things that I put into this gray area are these code blocks that you see along the left-hand side. Each one of these blocks is a different command that tells the computer what to do. And over here, you can see that they've grouped all of the commands or all of the code blocks into the type of code block. So there's a whole bunch of commands that are related to motion, a whole bunch of commands related to looks and sound and events. And I'd encourage you just to play around with those. You can see here that our code is tied to our sprite. So right now I have my Android sprite selected, and now any code that I put right here is going to control my Android character or my Android sprite. If I had my transition sprite selected, any code that I put here would control my transition sprite. So I'm going to stay with Android for now. I also have a couple of other tabs along the top. I have my Costumes tab right here. And this is actually going to be the first step for our program today. So you can see that even though over here it looks like my Android sprite just has one appearance, there are actually a whole bunch of different costumes or different ways that my sprite can look over here along this menu. And so what I'd like you to do first is to look through all of these costumes and choose a sprite that you feel like maybe best expresses your own personality. I like this guy right here. Now that you've selected the costume for your sprite, we're going to start building a little bit of code for our sprite. Now, I said earlier that we're going to be creating a simple gaming story. So today, our program is going to be very simple. This won't actually necessarily be a game that people play, although next week we're going to start getting into that. But just to help you learn how the blocks work, we're going to just have our person do some talking and tell a little story. The question that I'd like you to think about is, what video game character is the most like you? So, for example, I might say that maybe I'm like Yoshi from Mario. And so what we're going to do is have our character tell a little bit to answer that question. So you can go ahead and give some thought to what video game character you think you are most like. When you're ready, we're going to use some of our coding blocks to start telling our story. So, if you're ready, go ahead and click over here on the Looks tab. And that's going to bring up all of our code blocks or all of our commands that change the look of our sprite. We're going to choose the first one in the list. It says say hello for 2 seconds. And we're going to click it and hold the mouse and drag it out into our coding area. Now look what happens when I click on that block. Over here you can see that my sprite actually does that command. He says hello for 2 seconds. You can actually click into the white area here and it'll automatically highlight that text, and then you can change what that says. So for me, I might say something like, the game character that I am most like is Yoshi from Mario. And now, if I click that, my sprite is going to say that. What I'd like you to do is to try and answer that question with your own text or say block. Now what we can do is we can add another text block. So I'm going to grab another one from over here and put it right below. When I do that, you'll see that when I bring the two blocks fairly close together, there's a little gray area. That means they're going to click together. And now I can add even more text. So I might say why that I think that Yoshi is very much like me. So Yoshi has a lot of energy and is adventurous, just like me. So now look what happens if I click on this text block. The game character that I most like is Yoshi from Mario. Yoshi has a lot of energy and is adventurous just like me. Now, I noticed that 2 seconds was not long enough for me to read each of those. So you can actually change for how long each of those speech bubbles shows up. I might need to change this to 3 seconds and 3 seconds and then try it again. One thing when you're coding is to run your code, just like we're doing a lot of times, very frequently, to make sure that what you think is going to happen is actually happening. If you wait to do that and you put a whole bunch of code together and then click it and it doesn't happen the way you think, then you're not sure exactly where the problem is. So good coders run their program often to catch what are called bugs, which is just basically when the code doesn't do what you expect it to do. So what I'd like you to do now is pause this video and try making your own program. Add 2 or 3 or 4 even different text blocks that explain what video game character you are most like and why. Okay, so I have 4 different text blocks. Here's what my gaming story looks like. The game character I am most like is Yoshi from Mario. Yoshi has a lot of energy and is adventurous just like me. Yoshi is very trustworthy, like I am, and often adventures with a friend. Yoshi and I both love to jump. So, now I've told a very simple story about gaming using code. Now, let's mess around with some of the other blocks. Let's control maybe how my character moves. So I'm going to go up here to the blue motion block here, and I want maybe my character, because he says that he and Yoshi both love to jump, maybe I could have him jump a little bit. Okay, so I've put together some blocks that I think are going to make my sprite jump. I've used a control block called repeat, and so everything inside of this block is going to repeat 3 times, so he's going to jump 3 times. Then I used a couple of motion blocks. I used change Y by, now Y is the direction up and down in here, just like it would be in a graph. And it's changing by 25 and then waiting for a little bit and then changing by negative 25. So it's going up, waiting a little bit, then going down, and then waiting a little bit. And that's going to repeat that 3 times. So if I connect that code in with my other coding block, look what happens when I click on it. First, my sprite goes through all of the different talking that I had him do. And then he says, the last one, Yoshi and I both love to jump. And then Now, my sprite jumps just like I coded it to. Now, the last thing you'll always want to do when you're making a script for a sprite like this is go to your events section of code and use a when flag clicked at the top, because when the person is viewing your program, they won't have the code in front of them to click on. They will only have the green flag and the red flag controls. So we want to tell this program that when they click the green flag, it should run the code that you created. So now if I go over here, you can see that when I click the flag, it'll make the program go. Now what I'd like you to do is mess around and maybe add a little bit more to this story. I hope now you've started to get a little bit of a sense of what the different blocks in Scratch are about. And the last thing I challenge you to do is to click on the second link in the video description below, which takes you to a page that's going to give you some other options that you can take your story and expand it. All right, when you click on that link, it will open up this page that says Google for Education, which is the curriculum that we're using for Hour of Code, CS First, and then you can see that we are in Lesson 1 Gaming Story, and we are at the Add-ons page. Now if you scroll down, there's a video explaining how to use the add-ons, but then down here you can choose an add-on. These are all optional, but they'll help you learn more about Scratch and add to your project. As always, you're very welcome to join us in person for Hour of Code on Wednesdays at 4 o'clock if you have any questions. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about coding today. Thanks.